All right, so this is live. Let's check this thing out. See if my signal's working today. My Wi-Fi has been kind of weird lately. Let me adjust that just a little bit. All right, looks like we got somebody on what we got live on one of the cameras. I'm on two different Facebook pages, two different cameras working right now. One of them is on the Rogueway and one of them is on my personal page, and I'm not even sure which one's which. I think this is going to be personal page. If you're looking at me right now, you should be on Casey Pippin's, my regular Facebook page, if I'm pointing at you. And if I'm pointing at you, it should be the Rogueway page. Let me go to my laptop and see what kind of feed I've got. Yeah, something like that. That's going to be right. Anyway, that's maybe my personal page. Whatever. Yep. And this is Rogueway. So, if you flip over to the Rogueway page, Rogueway podcast page, then it's a close-up picture of me. If you want to be that close, you might not. So the one I'm messing with right now, that camera, is the Rogueway page. All right, got one person who jumped on it. We're going to try to move everything over to the Rogueway page. So if I'm pointing at you, that you're watching on Casey Pippin on a personal page. If I'm pointing at you, you're watching on a Rogueway page. So ideally, everybody will move over to the Rogueway page, and we'll start doing stuff from there. What's going on, everyone? How is my sound? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me good. I'm using a mic on one of them, but not on both. So if you're watching on my personal page, the sound's not going to be as good as it is on the Rogueway page, just because I've only got the mic hooked up to that camera. But you should be able to hear me either way. Hope everybody's doing good. It's Wednesday. Appreciate you guys dropping in. I figured I would come on and talk to you all for a minute, just about the week, about some stuff that's been going on. I know we had some storms and we were out of power for a bit. So some stuff's happened. Tell you what's going on with me. The first thing that's happened with me is I have fucked around and discovered TikTok, and that shit is hilarious. It is the devil. I think I can't get off of it. You guys give me a thumbs up if you're hearing me okay. Sound good? If it sounds good, give me a thumbs up, everyone. Appreciate you guys. If you want to, go ahead and go over to the Rogueway page, and you'll be looking at a closer image of me, and the sound will be way better. All right, so what's been going on in the news? The funniest thing that has happened that I want to jump on and talk about real quick is New York City. Everyone remembers, I posted this yesterday, but everyone remembers that in New York City, the mayor there, this total dickhead, he created a snitch line. All right, a snitch line. And what that was if people weren't obeying the COVID guidelines, you could call this number or text this number with pictures and just kind of basically snitch on them. I guess they would get fined. I don't know. Maybe the Gestapo police would show up at their door. I don't know what was going to happen or what was supposed to happen. But the New York City mayor put out created this snitch line. And ideally, you would go around, I guess you would take a picture of somebody and, not obeying the freaking Gestapo laws, whatever the fuck was going on there, and text it in. Well, the New York Post reports yesterday, you can't make this shit up, man. This is awesome. This is America right here. This is America. The New York Post reported yesterday that they had to shut the line down because it was being flooded with pictures with dick pics. Yeah, you heard it right. So the New York snitch line got flooded with dick pics, and I don't know if these things were coming from just New York City or if they were coming from around the world. I kind of lost my connection here. I'm going to read a little bit of it for you. Shit's awesome. When there was a time when Americans revolted with physical action, and now we revolt with dick pics. That's the world we live in right now. That is rebellion. Pretty cool. So let me go down here. How do you say its name? I don't even know how to say its name. Let's see here. Hold on. Appreciate you guys switching over. You're on the Rogueway page or you're on my personal page. If you're on my Facebook page, if you'll go to the Rogueway podcast page, you'll get a better picture and better sound. De Blasio's social distancing tip line flooded with penis photos and Hitler memes, as reported by the New York Post. Mayor Bill de Blasio's critics let him know how they really felt about him ordering the New Yorkers to snitch on each other for violating social distancing rules by flooding his new tip line with crank complaints, including dick pics and people flipping the bird, the Post has learned. I don't know why that popped up. Photos of extended middle fingers, the mayor dropping the Staten Island groundhog, and news coverage of him going to the gym have all been texted to a special tip line that de Blasio announced Saturday, according to screenshot posted on Twitter. So it goes on to say, one user sent the message, "We will fight this tyrannical overreach," to the service and got an automated message that in part said, "Hello and thank you for texting NYC311 and then F you." So this thing was flooded with people telling you what they thought about the overreach against liberties. And this does come down to a local government issue, guys. It really does. And I understand 100% that people need to do the right thing. We need to try to fight this virus. I've said this before. Business owners, church pastors, whoever can step in and do the right thing, they need to do the right thing. But the problem in America is, should the government be forcing this stuff? And the two sides, one side would say, yeah, government needs to enforce it because otherwise it won't happen. But the other side's argument to that is that there was a time in the free market and liberty, the pre-tyrannical U.S. when the government couldn't tell businesses to shut down. It didn't own or run businesses. So that's the debate that goes on in the public sector. But meanwhile, people are letting local government know how they feel in their own various ways, from protests to New York City's number being shut down because of the profanity that it was receiving. Interesting. I'd love to hear your comments. What do you think about that? How are things going where you're at? In Monticello, where I'm at, it's really not bad. The only complaint I have, or it's not even really a complaint, the only thing that I have had a gripe with is Walmart, and I just don't understand their system they have set up. I don't really know what the point of it is, but you can watch some earlier stuff and see my opinions on that. But I will tell you again, I do not understand the divided entrance and exit mentality. We're going to go in there and we're going to be in checkout lines with each other. I don't know what corralling people in one direction and corralling them out in another direction and splitting them up there. I don't know what that's supposed to do when, we all wind up in the same checkout lines. So don't understand that at all. But other than that, I am ready for the towns to open back up. I'm just ready for it to happen. If people need to stay home, they need to stay home. If you think you need to stay home, then stay home. I think we can still social distance and get everything going. I believe people have enough responsibility, or they're going to act more responsible than they will in this situation. I look around and I don't know. But at the same time, I am not an expert in viruses, but I do understand. I have a theory. I don't know if you would call it a conspiracy theory, but I have a theory of why I think this all happened. I believe, I think I know what happened and why. All right. If you look at the situation, and I'm well aware that science has said this is a natural occurring virus. So this is not. I'm not getting on the bandwagon of this thing being created, but we have had information come out that there is reason to believe that this thing was held in a lab. It probably wasn't created in a lab, but it was in a lab. All right, and that China, how's our president? China. This lab was a shitty lab. Okay, it didn't have the proper safety precautions. There had been warnings about it, and it just really didn't have very good precautions. And because of that, the natural virus that they had in the lab, not created there, but they had in the lab, this coronavirus, managed to, it infected someone because of imperfect or, flawed or lack of, I guess you could say, precautionary measures. And then that person went to the market, and that's where this thing started. That's the official story, or I don't know what the official story is, but there's a chance that may have been what happened. Now, let's take this a step further. I get it. I understand why the government would freak out when this thing happened and why all these measures would be taken. I do. Because the fact of the matter is we know this thing came from China, and we don't know, we don't believe anything they tell us. Okay? This is China we're talking about here. This is China, as the president says it, China. And this isn't a measure against Chinese. I'm talking about the Chinese government. And the Chinese government is not something that the United States trusts. Whether or not you trust any governments on you, but I'm just saying that you never know what somebody else is doing what somebody else might be interfering with or doing to try to create something as a weapon or alter something as a weapon. And we just didn't know what was going on. So when this thing hit the world, I believe that there were two things going on. And this is why information's so confusing. Number one, we were reacting to what we knew about it, which is probably way less of a necessity. What we've been doing is way less of a necessity with what we actually know about it than what we were afraid we didn't know about it. And they've said this much, okay? We don't know what this thing's capable of. So if you think about it, something comes out of a Chinese lab, all right? We don't believe it was created there. We just believe they were studying it there. They had it there, and it came out of this lab because of poor precautionary measures. It got out there, and we naturally, as a nation, our government, the Department of Defense, the people who are responsible for ensuring that threats don't hurt us, they're going to go the worst case scenario because we don't know in the end what this thing might evolve into or what might happen with this in the long run. So that is what's going on. And for that purpose, I get it. I understand both sides. For that purpose, we had to be careful because we didn't know if this was a black project by China. We just didn't know what it was. We didn't know what it was capable of. We didn't know really where it came from at first. And I think everyone was just being careful. And I hope that what we know about it now is the extent of it. I hope that it's true. I hope that it isn't some type of virus that was manipulated by Chinese scientists, government scientists, or that it wasn't created. I hope it was just a naturally occurring virus. It got loose because their labs suck, and that's all there is to it, and we're dealing with it. Now, if that's the case, and we prove that that's the case, that's when things start coming down. That's when we can start going back to a normal life and essentially, dealing with the reality of what it actually is or what it isn't. However, there is a cautionary time, I think, that we have to consider and to ensure that this thing isn't some type of Pandora box, weaponized virus that the Chinese were working on and it got away accidentally. And I think that is probably the extent of what's going on. But that being the case, the issues come when we're talking about liberties versus, measures. This is not a new argument. This is a debate that's went on since the Constitution was written. The balance between liberty and security. Benjamin Franklin spoke about it. This is something that's always been out there. It's not a new debate. And the question is, what can be done? What rights can be taken away and given back? And if they're taken away and given back, are they truly rights or are they privileges? I understand the argument. A right that can be taken away and given back as often as the powers that deem it necessary, that's not really a right. That's a privilege. So, by the definition, a right should be something that we have. It's not given to us theoretically by man. It's given to us by a higher power, or it's given to us, or it's ours because of a right we have to as people. It's not something that that government or anyone can determine when it applies and when it doesn't, and that's the issue. When it comes to religious liberties, that's the issue. So the argument is always between, do we trust people to do the right thing or do we not? And if we don't trust people to do the right thing, does government have the right to force them? And if that's the case, then isn't government truly in charge and we the people are not actually free? That's the debate. So if you're wondering why people are marching in towns and protesting what seems to be common sense, this is why. And that is the argument. And that is a solid argument, okay? I, for one, am extremely concerned about I've said it before, about the precedents this sets. All right, we have a virus. As soon as we determine it's not anything that's a weaponized attack from China, as soon as we can determine that, then things should be going back to normal. But the question is, should anything have ever been allowed to be taken away at the beginning? And that's where I say a right isn't a right if it's something that can be just given and taken at will. That's certainly not what I thought I was serving for when I was defending the Constitution of the United States. That's not what I thought I was swearing an allegiance to when I swore to defend the Constitution. My understanding, and even in college, was that a right was something that was mine regardless of whether for the good or bad. It's almost like it's marriage, for better or worse, till death do us part. And as service members and as veterans, I think it's easier for us to digest that, for better or worse. So if I die, I die. This is what I signed up for. We have already agreed to give our lives. Okay? We have already agreed to give our lives to defend our liberties. So absolutely we are going to be standing there arguing this fact. And then those who haven't agreed to do that, they're the ones usually don't understand why we would be opposing something like our liberties or our rights being infringed upon for the betterment for the greater good, as everyone puts it, not being on the right side of history and all that stuff. That's where that comes from. So, it's a different culture, and that's where we're at. So it'll be interesting to see in the next few weeks. The president has basically put out new guidelines and advising and allowing governors to make decisions on when they open up their states, when they start pulling back on some of these measures. And this is something I completely agree with. I think that the president should absolutely be giving that authority back to the governors. And I mean, that's, but at the same time, this is where we get into the paradox. Are governors in charge or is the president in charge? You can't have your cake and eat it too. All right. You've got to decide whether or not we have a president or whether or not we have a king, whether or not we have governors or whether we just have, governors in the sense of someone appointed by, the president, not elected and told what to do. Without getting too much into history, into the American government as we are, I'm not a professor in it, but essentially the states' rights issue started subsiding to financial means. Okay, and what I mean by that is states have not been really sovereign since honestly, the Confederation changed to the United States. Then that was the first. The actual Constitution itself is probably the first thing that initiated that change. And then from then it was kind of a slow, kind of a slide into the situation we are now. And a lot of that came through financial means. A lot of that came through federal money. States, the federal government could not make a state do this, but they could deny it federal money for education and roads and things like that. And I'm not going to get into all that, but that's kind of where this whole thing started or has went. So that's where the question is. But going back to New York, I think it's absolutely hilarious that their snitch line got shut down because of dick pics. So that's pretty funny. Leave your comments. Make sure you guys are following the Roadway Podcast. You can catch this stuff on my personal page and on the Roadway Podcast Facebook page, but I really appreciate it if you do two things for me. Go to the Roadway Podcast page, like it, follow, but more importantly, click on one of the YouTube videos. All right, I have a YouTube channel, the Roadway. There's a YouTube channel, and I have almost no subscribers. I'm trying to build that up. Spent this week kind of messing with some software, learning how to edit, and changing the lookup and making it look like a real page and not just a bunch of videos of me talking, even though essentially that's what it is at this point. But there's a lot of stuff I can't do until I get so many subscribers on YouTube. So until I get 100, I can't even have my own personalized URL or address. Until I get to 1,000, I can't monetize, that type of stuff. So do me a favor, go to the page, click on one of the YouTube videos, which is essentially just something like this. You don't have to watch it, but I'd appreciate if you'd watch it, leave a comment, like it, and hit that subscribe button, and that will help me reach that first goal, which is 100. That's where I'm at right now, or way less than that, but that's my goal right now. So another news thing that was interesting to me is the president, the news was making it out like he did this through a tweet, but he didn't do this through a tweet. President I guess it would be a clarification of rules of engagement, but he authorized naval captains. He authorized the Navy to fire on Iranian boats that were harassing naval ships. Now, this is pretty freaking cool, because if you kept up with this, when I was contracting overseas, I don't remember what year it was. I want to say it was 2008, 2009. So a long time ago for a lot of you. For us older guys, just seemed like yesterday. But Iran, during the previous administration, had actually, there's no nice way to put it, they captured a Navy boat. All right, and essentially that Navy boat, the crew surrendered. This was a big deal because Americans, we don't surrender, but they did. And this goes to show you that this was something that was a result of leadership. The leadership and the way things are set. Going back on stuff, let me clarify. I'm just reading a comment. Doug Gillum says, even governors don't have the right to suspend our civil liberties. Yeah, 100%, dude. Nobody has a right to suspend liberties. No one has a right to, the Constitution has not been suspended. The question is people are getting down as to what liberties are we specifically talking about versus privileges, whatever. So that's the debate. But when you look at the Bill of Rights, that has not been suspended. The government, the president, no one can suspend the Constitution. I think there's only a couple of times where it should even be a debatable issue, and that would be in an invasion of the United States by a foreign nation, in a state of absolute war. Then there would be some issues there, but definitely the governors cannot suspend the Constitution, nor can the president suspend the Constitution. Your Constitution is the government, okay? Essentially, that is the bedrock of everything. We the people sums it up. The fact that the Constitution begins with we the people, it's philosophically giving, it's not even giving, it's giving the privilege of people to govern. It's not, but we the people is the reason why the Constitution starts with those lines. It's to distinguish between other nations. There are other nations out there who have freedom. Okay, but it's not a right. It's given by the king, the monarchy, or the parliament. It's something that's handed down. And we have to be careful that we don't transition into a nation that we have accepted an idea that the government allows us to be free. That's not what nation. That's not the country we live in, and that's the issue. And that's what Doug's talking about. He's absolutely right. Going back to Iran, these boats harass. They do all these harassing maneuvers against naval vessels, and up until this point, there's been debate on what could actually be done about it. The president has basically just given the okay to the captains of the boats, the skippers of the boats, the admirals to consider whatever they consider to be hostile, and to use force to protect their boats, to shoot. And I will tell you right now, that's going to change some shit right there, because if you've never seen the firepower of the United States Navy, it is an incredible thing once you really understand, not just in a couple guns on a boat, but really understand the firepower of the United States Navy. And this is coming from a former Marine. I'm telling you, it is unbelievable what kind of absolute destruction the Navy could deal out should it decide to do so, as can, the entire military. So that's going to be interesting to watch. The final thing I want to talk to you guys today, this is a short video. I wasn't trying to make this long. I wasn't trying to be on live all day. I just kind of wanted to touch base with you. But a final thing I wanted to get you guys, when you go into my Facebook page, you will see, if you go to my personal one, and I believe it's also on the Rogueway page, you'll look on there. I made a post about Liam Borse. That's a friend of mine's son, Greg Borse. He's been on the show before. We co-hosted together a lot. Greg Borse's son, Liam, is deep into the Crucible. The Crucible is the final test for Marines in boot camp. So at the end of Marine Corps recruit training, you have this one final exercise. It's called the Crucible. And what the Crucible is it is kind of it's a last test. It's kind of like a short version of a Hell Week for Marines. Not near as extensive as Bud's Hell Week. No one quote me and say I was comparing the Crucible to Hell Week and Bud's. Not doing that by any means, but the best way I can explain to those who don't have an idea what it is, it would be something kind of like that to a lesser extent. But it is very grueling. I went through it myself. I was one of the first recruit. It was early when I went through Marine Corps boot camp. It was pretty new, but at the time, you haven't hiked a lot. Even in boot camp at this point, you haven't done a whole lot of hiking with packs and weights and combat loads and things like that. And you're essentially, hiking 60 miles. I think it's 54 hours. And the entire thing is 45, 50 miles or something that you're hiking with a pack, with full kit and combat load, and extended weight. You're carrying supplies. You have to take everything out there with you. So there's a lot of carrying ammo cans with sand and just a lot of that stuff. And what the Crucible does is it consists of that 45 to 50 miles of terrain you're covering, full combat load, over those several days with food and sleep deprivation on top of it. And then you obviously have, events throughout it, combat assault courses and things like that. So it's a pretty good gut check. And then at the end of it, you're starving, and then, you get to a point at the end of it for San Diego Marines. It's the Grim Reaper Mountain, or hill, that whatever you want to call it, you climb. It seemed like a mountain at the time. Then later on you go back and you go, that really wasn't that big. But it's a big deal to you at the time. But in San Diego, the end of the Crucible is used to be on the Reaper, and at Parris Island, they have a designated spot. But at the end of that evolution, you are awarded your Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. This is not your Marine graduation. This is like a week before your Marine graduation, if they still do this.